Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Student Talk podcast. Thank you all very much for your support on our previous episode. We humbly appreciate everything you guys have done, the shares, the likes, the comments. Thank you very much. Today we have a special episode and I'm your host, Majid Idris and
Maxim Aracha.
Maxim Arocha, exactly. And with us is a guest star today who is himself a podcast creator and someone who will be telling us about the most interesting things you'll hear about today, but we'll leave the surprise till later. Could you introduce yourself, Tom?
Sure. I'm Tom Kambouris, and as you mentioned, I have some experience doing podcasts, but I'll hold the secret until. Do you want me to unveil the secret myself, or were you wanting to
make them wait until the end? I think
let's wait until the end.
So, this topic specifically that we're going to be talking about is for the youth. And now we wanted to centralize around the idea of lifestyle of the youth. And I think the best way to do this is to talk about this topic with somebody who has experience, who knows about what they're saying. And Tom has experience in mindfulness. And so we've got him as a guest who's going to talk to us about mindfulness, about stress, and how to handle it through mindfulness and all the different types of mindfulness meditations that exist around us. To start off, we want to say that this topic of stress is something that's trending nowadays. Don't you agree, Maxim?
It's very common, yeah.
It's something that it's happening more and more frequently. And according to some statistics by the Center of Disease Control, 7.1% of children aged 3 to 17 years have been diagnosed with anxiety.
Yeah, it's probably much more because many people don't get help, don't seek that help.
That's true. That is true. And that being said as well is that 7.1% may sound like a small percentage of the world population, but that's approximately 4.4 million people between the ages of 3 to 17 years old. 4.4 million people of our population. And that's not the rest. Like Maxim said, there are other people who have talked about it, and there are other people who have decided to not confront the situation. And let's get on with the podcast. Let's talk about this. Tom, tell us more about this, about mindfulness and stress.
I'm happy to. Can I ask you a question? Because that's as you mentioned, 7.1% sounds a bit low. Both of you are, of course, in that age group, and you have your social network of friends are more of a personal reference. So we're not talking about scientific references, but what percentage of the people that you are aware of, maybe it's specifically in the school that you're at, or whatever reference point you want to mention, if you were to just guess, there's no winning prize or booby prize on this, what would you say is the percentage of kids that have anxiety right now?
The great majority, I would say.
I would go for more than 50% of adolescents at my age right now, and Maxim's age, 17 years old, 18. Discounting younger, teenagers, I'm talking on behalf of our age group. I think more than 50% of us struggle with this anxiety. Some don't want to consider anxiety. That's the thing. So while many of them are talking about stress, at one point it becomes anxiety, and not a lot of people talk about that. And, it does sound, 7.1% does sound low, and it's true, there are more people who suffer from this situation.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well. 50% or like the young people that are sort of in our lives. My son is 24, but he has friends that are a little bit younger, a little bit older, but it seems like it's pretty prevalent. And to your point, Majid, is there's a lot to be stressed out about these days, right? There's a lot going on. If we just take a bit of a look back on just technology alone. So technology, I'm not sure when did the cell phone come into or the mobile phone come into sort of the general population, but sometime around 2000 and
Yeah, like the iPhone came out in 2007, no? Or no,
2007, 2008. Yeah.
yeah.
So these have been around for a while, but to have a smartphone that can do all kinds of things that is fairly new to us. And I was just looking, it's fascinating because wherever you go, you see these are people scrolling, and there's something about how they've created this that is almost addictive, right? It's addictive to us. So I'm not sure what the addictive part is. Is it the gamification of how it's set up? Is it that we just have all of this information at hand? Because we've had information at hand before in different ways. We've had encyclopedias on bookshelves, right? We've had televisions. We've had smart televisions that would, that you can really seek out programs that are of interest to you. But there's something about technology, and specifically with mobile phones these days, that the people that are designing them have figured out how to keep us captured by these devices. So whether it's your mobile phone, whether it's your computer,
I think it's also part of, when you have a smartphone, you have a device like that, there's an oversimplification of having things in front of you. If you want to search something up on Google, even if you had the encyclopedia, you have to scroll through different pages. But right now on your phone, you could just search it up, or even talk to Siri and tell her, "Hey Siri, who's the 15th president of the United States?" And then there you have it. Don't need to look any further. And this oversimplification has become so easy. I think I personally I find myself quite addicted to the phone, and that's one of the main reasons why I'm addicted to it.
It's just the simplicity and access of information. Whatever's on your mind, you can find an answer to. If your mind goes to something else, you can find an answer to it. It seems like there is this, it's the almost like it is a Siri, which is an assistant that can just give you whatever you need with regard to information at a second's notice, which is, I guess, a bit that's infectious. I think there's other things as well. The way they set up social media, there's some reward programming in there, so that if you're on Instagram and you've posted something, you start looking for likes. If you're on Facebook, it's some sort of like reward mechanism.
Yeah.
And then also, they have tweaked the algorithm so that you're on YouTube and you finish a video, and pretty soon you start seeing things that are similar, and they make it difficult for you to have a little bit more control of these things. So that's setting the stage. The creation of this technology is getting better and better at capturing our attention. It is 100%, my experience, and I think it'd be hard to find anyone that disagrees with that fact, that it's just really, really hard to stay away from, whether it's your phone, your computer, Netflix, Spotify, YouTube, on and on and on, all of them. It's an onslaught. And then you add the pressures of life, which have also increased, so at your age, there are the pressures of studying and of exams, of your parents, of your peer group, of other social considerations. Where do I fit with others in my group? Am I too self-conscious? Am I not self-conscious enough? All of these things are working in overdrive, particularly at your age. So that all stretches our ability to be resilient, to cope in a way that we could cope a lot easier in the past. So this is where mindfulness comes in. Let me just take a step back and just ask, what familiarity do either of you have with mindfulness? Have you ever tried it, or any other sort of knowledge about mindfulness before I sort of dive into it?
Oh, Maxim, you practice certain type of meditation, no?
Well, yeah, since I was a kid, I used to go to this Kung Fu gym, what do you call it? And unconsciously, I started meditating there in a way, in a mindfulness way, as the teacher was always very insistent on meditation since we were kids. And
Okay.
that has led on to this day, because I always try to meditate. Not very often. I'm not consistent enough, but that's basically.
But I think you told me something about guided meditation as well. You've
Yes,
done
correct. Which is links back to mindfulness slightly, I would imagine.
I think guided meditation. It's a type of meditation. No, it's like where somebody tells you what you're perceiving at that instant. Yeah. No, for me, I don't have a certain type of meditation. Although I'm religious, so a kind of prayer is kind of a meditation for me. That's my furthest experience of mindfulness is through prayer. But talking to Maxim about this as well the other day, that there's a wide, like, what would you call it? A wide spectrum of different types of meditation.
Yeah,
I think that's something we want to know about, because it's a universal topic. Not everyone can implement the same type of meditation.
It's a great question. And so with regard to mindfulness, so there's two words that we're talking about. One is meditation and one is mindfulness. What I would say is, if you talk about meditation, the spectrum is huge with regard to types of meditation. So Maxime, you do a certain type of meditation. It could be around chanting a mantra. It could be around visualizing something. It could be around noticing your surroundings. It could be, some meditations are around types of prayer, concentrating on your breath. There's movement meditations where you're out and you're walking and you're just being a little bit more aware of maybe your footsteps or your surroundings, your environment. So there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of meditation. Mindfulness is one of those types of meditation. So if we had a table and the table had all types of meditation, mindfulness sits in that table, in that selection of meditation. So these two words are not interchangeable. Mindfulness is a type of meditation. Meditation describes mindfulness, but they're not sort of equal. So when we talk about mindfulness, there is just a huge amount of research now that indicates that mindfulness, when done in a certain way, whether it's guided or you have just a certain amount of instructions on how to do mindfulness, starts working, almost starts, if you could picture your brain with a bunch of wires on it, right? And anytime stress comes through into your life, whether it's through exams or through technology or whatever, there is a trained and learned way that your brain operates, and it functions with the mechanism that it was, sort of born with and has developed through your life. And what we're talking about is, when we struggle with anxiety or stress, the channels, those wires, are not sort of wide enough to deal with all of the input of the chaos that's coming at us. So what mindfulness does, sort of underneath the hood, let's say, underneath the behind the scenes, is it starts rewiring the brain in a way that it can better cope with things like anxiety, stress, depression, even other things like concentration, focus, creativity. If you go online and you research mindfulness and you say, how does mindfulness affect, put a word next to it, whether it is anxiety, stress, depression, any of those, you'll find a wide range of studies that, and these are not, sort of a couple people in a small village that are these are wide ranging studies in very reputable universities like Harvard, like Oxford.
I saw from the Mayo Clinic, which is a well-respected, clinic, and does like medical research and stuff like this. And they said that one of the ways of coping with stress is through the idea of mindfulness, whether it be yoga, meditation, relaxation, and the awareness of the present moment. That's, I think, what mindfulness encompasses, the awareness of yourself and awareness on the present moment you're currently living in.
Correct. That is exactly right. You have studied up a bit.
We've done some research on it. I think we were really interested in this. This is honestly, one of the topics that I'd love to learn more about.
Okay. So just curious, Maxim, how much of your experience with meditation involves being aware of the present moment, and how much of it is maybe a different type of meditation?
For the most part, it would be like a 50-50, I would say. It's not always about the awareness. Guided meditation also encompasses imagining you are in a different place to the place you are in now. Yeah, so
that's the type you do. It does a little, it's about 50-50. Sometimes it's being aware of the present moment, and sometimes it is imagination of being in a different space. Great.
right.
Okay. So with mindfulness specifically, so with all these different meditations, they can be very useful and very helpful, along with other things in life that can be very useful and very helpful. You know, some people like to work out, some people like to socialize, some people like to just, you know, vegetate by playing games, or not vegetate by playing games, but actually be interested in playing games. It's de-stress, right? So to decompress in different ways. Some people like to go running, or prepare food, or work in the garden. All of these things can be useful and are useful. Mindfulness is in a different category, in that not only is it useful temporarily just to decompress you, but it's also working behind the scenes to rewire those aspects of your brain so that you can more healthily cope with stress as you go forward, whatever the stress is. So here's how mindfulness works. And Majid, you sort of described it by saying it's being aware of the present moment, being aware of yourself and your environment.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And it's not just being aware, but it's being okay with whatever it is. So when you're in a mindfulness practice, you're aware of your breath, you're aware of what sounds you hear, you're aware of, if your eyes are closed, what's happening underneath your eyes. If your eyes are open, you're aware of your visual field. You're aware of your body, what sensations you have in your body. And whatever's happening, your only job in mindfulness is to be okay with that and to observe it, to be curious about it. I like to think of it as almost as, when I'm in my mindfulness practice, it's like I'm a scientist with a lab coat and a clipboard, and I'm just taking notes on this body, me, and this environment, and how it's all working. And sometimes I really struggle with my concentration. That's fine. I'm taking notes on that. Today, Tom, you're struggling with your concentration. You can't seem to stay with a guided session. You can't really seem to stay with your breath, or that's interesting. What's happening with that? So there's different circumstances that happen across, 1, 5, 10, 50, 100 mindfulness practical sessions. And each of those circumstances, if you can be okay with them, what it's training you to do is be okay with just about anything, right? And this is where it starts helping with stress. If I can be okay with some days I just don't want to do my practice, I'm just going to study that and see how does that exhibit itself to me? It's tight in my chest. I completely am losing my attention. It's something that it just feels like I want to get up and not do that. Interesting. Let's just look at that behaviorally. How does that look? Next time I'm stressed, let me just see how that looks. How is that exhibiting itself to me? How is that presenting itself to me? If I can be okay with my mindfulness practice, I start slowly being okay with just about anything that's coming my way. Even as the stress levels go up, it's just another thing that I can observe. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, like I never really thought about it this way. Like, thing about mindfulness is that I don't know where to start. I think you've set a good point there. You've set a foundation, and I never really thought about it in that way. With this idea you mentioned, how do you think somebody should start? What's the first step going into this? Where can you start with such a big topic, with such a, it's really subjective, depends on who you are, but what's the best advice to start? What's the first step?
So the first step, I think, is to have a mindset that is inquisitive about mindfulness, and to know that there is a ton of different styles of guided sessions, of working with through a book, and there's some different things to concentrate on while you're in your practice, of having an actual mindfulness practitioner that is following someone that is a trained mindfulness instructor, or a person that can take them through those steps. There's a bunch of different ways. You can go to YouTube. You can, you can open the newspaper. There'll be an article on it. But whatever it is, know that sometimes it takes a while just to figure out what is going to work for you, and to not judge it too early. And if you can do that, then there's some resources I would recommend. There's one app called Insight Timer, and Insight Timer is mostly free. And I think they have a premium option. I've never paid for the premium option. I don't feel like I need to, but there's hundreds of different guided teachers on there that have, there's men and there's women and there's,
there's an app called Calm, no, or something like this as well.
Yep. There's another one called Calm.
Yeah.
There's Headspace. There are a few different ones.
Yeah.
I would have a play with going on one of those apps and just say, beginner mindfulness practice or something, some sort of filtered keywords, something like that. See what comes up and have a go. You probably only want to start with about a 10-minute session, maybe 10 to 15-minute session, which for some people will feel like, hours, because it's just, we haven't been able to sit quiet for 10 minutes, seems like for a long time. And just have a play at it. See how it feels. You might like that one. You might think, oh, that person's talking too quick, or that person's voice is irritating, or ooh, that person's voice is quite nice, and I think I can listen to that. And then don't judge yourself. This is like going to the gym and getting in shape at the gym. If you go to the gym with expectations on the first workout that you have, you're going to come back and you're probably going to have pushed too hard the first workout. You're going to be sore the second workout. Or you may not even want to go the second workout because that hurt too much. So inside my head, I'm thinking, I don't want to put my body through that pain anymore. So there goes, the discipline of having that as a routine. So I just go and have some fun, have a bit of a play with.
Just like not experimenting, but trying out things.
Yeah, exactly. Try out a few different things and see what works for you.
Yeah, I think already deciding to try out things for you, I think that's already a step towards mindfulness. The idea, because you're trying out new things, you're adapting to different situations, you're seeing what you're comfortable in. And if I can remember very well, like, was it Bruce Lee? Yeah, Bruce Lee said, like, be formless, shapeless. You see the water, when it's in the cup, it becomes the cup. When it's in the teapot, it becomes the teapot.
Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
And I think that quote by Bruce Lee really, really, like, I don't know, it's the first time somebody comes out in the pop culture and tells you that, this kind of stuff like that. And they really practice it. I think Bruce Lee had his, like, what's the name of his martial arts?
Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah.
Taekwondo, yeah.
Yeah.
No, Jeet Kune Do.
Jeet Kune Do.
Jeet Kune Do, yeah. Yeah, his own martial arts. And I think he encompassed that. You could see it from the way he talks, from the way he acts. He encompassed. And I really like that quote. It always reminds me of mindfulness.
Be water, my friend. That's really impressive that you know that quote from that's because most people know just the be water, my friend, the 4 words, but there's a whole sort of passage that is before that.
Shapeless. Yeah, and that was really interesting. And I was talking to Maxime about this yesterday. I was telling him about using the idea of water, the concept of water. And I think what I told you about was when water is boiling, there's so many fluctuations between it. The weight of the water is not constant because gas is escaping and gas is coming, gas is escaping. It's not constant. It's not consistent with itself. When you transfer it, there's a lot of the gases being lost, and it can cause a lot of problems. But when you just stop and calm the water down a bit, give it a break, just for a while, it becomes still, and the mass of that water becomes consistent for a while. Obviously, there's going to be a slight change, but it becomes more and more consistent. I think we in this world of today is a rapid movement. It's like that water that's boiling. Everything's happening so fast. We're trying to catch up, and we just can't get there, and we keep on trying and trying, and there's no consistency in it because we're getting lost with that, with that rush. And what I like about mindfulness is it gives you that word that I like to call stillness. It just tells you, hey, you're still water. You're still that cup of water, but you're just still now. There's more consistency in your life.
It's a great analogy. And I think, Bruce Lee, to whatever extent that we can say, we don't know Bruce Lee, we've never met Bruce Lee, but from what he has exhibited out in pop culture, there's an element of him that you have to think he was onto something. He was on to understanding not just, areas of mindfulness, but very, very open-minded with regard to martial arts. So he was really one of the first people to consider mixed martial arts, because martial arts were very sort of siloed, and a judo practitioner would never ever go into a dojo of a karate practitioner or a kung fu practitioner, but they would all think they were the best. But Bruce Lee was the first to really start. And this is my point, really, is that having that open awareness of all of the possibilities is a perspective of mindfulness. But he was the first to start saying, well, maybe we could use some striking from, I don't know, maybe Taekwondo or something like that, or some kicks from karate, or, and start bringing stuff together. And that's how he created Jeet Kune Do. But I think the other thing with mindfulness, maybe that would be helpful for your viewers, is a little bit of an introduction to a practice. So the steps leading up to a practice. So what I would say are some important steps would be where you would practice. So I would practice, you can either be sitting down or lying down. Some practices are walking, but initially I would say sitting down or lying down. You want to be pretty comfortable. So I'm going to just get comfortable here like this. And I'd put my feet in a position that would be, able to stay in that position for the duration of that mindfulness practice. So if it was 10 minutes, where would my feet most likely be able to stay comfortably for 10 minutes? Maybe they'd be crossed. Maybe they'd be both feet flat on the ground. Maybe they'd be on the, on the chair. Maybe they'd be crossed, who knows what. Same with my hands. Do I want my hands to be on, on my knees? Do I want them to be cupped, sort of in my lap? And then the other thing I would say is, with your hands and your feet, also just have the rest of your body pretty comfortable. But there's one thing that I would also recommend, which is make sure that your back is alert. So you want to have your back sort of not rigid, not so it's like, off of the chair, but alert, so that it's pretty straight. And that allows you to be able to be energized enough to go through an entire practice. Sometimes if our back is slouched, we tend to get sleepy. And that, although, being super, super relaxed where you can actually get sleepy or drowsy has benefits as well, but it's not mindfulness benefits. It's benefits of just sort of relaxing yourself into that other area of sleep. So those are some introductory sort of setup things to consider. You might want to be in a room that has not, distractions aren't bad. Remember, the whole thing with mindfulness is whatever it is, right? I'm not going to judge any of it.
Yeah.
Some distractions, too many distractions of, people in the room, people coming and going, just might either cause them or cause you a bit of discomfort. And so that might be something to think about. So something that feels like it's a fairly quiet space, you now understand sort of the positioning of your body. And then the third thing is typically mindfulness will at some point be curious about your breath. And there's three places that I like to recommend that are areas where you can concentrate on your breath. So one is right on your upper lip as air comes through, passes your upper lip into your nostrils, into your body, and then out of your body and into out your nostrils and out again, passes down your upper lip again. So that area is a nice focus area if you're concentrating on oxygen as it enters and exits your body. If that is the place, I'd keep my mouth closed just so that you're not breathing out of your mouth, you're just breathing out of your nose. So that's one. The second one is your chest. So I would recommend being aware of your chest and how it expands and contracts. And if you're really aware of it, you start seeing that it's not just your chest in the front, it's your, the sides of your chest, maybe even the back of your chest, your torso as it sort of expands and contracts. You can feel it kind of everywhere. And so that's the second area. The third area is just underneath your navel, which is sort of your diaphragm area, your abdomen. And again, contraction and expansion. And have a play at all of those areas and then decide which one feels the most comfortable. And then when you do your mindfulness practice, probably stick with that one area that you feel is the most comfortable. And that would be something that's going to come into play at some point during a mindfulness practice, just being aware of your breath.
I see. And, since this is for the youth, talking on behalf of the youth, many of us don't have that much free time. What do you think we can do with that limited? Do you think we're able to do all that you said in that limited free time? Because, we go to school at 8, we're back at 4. Some of us have extracurricular activities, homework, exams. There's no time. And I think that's the issue a lot about in the youth is that we don't have free time. So how can we go about that?
Yeah, let me ask Maxim, I know you said your practice, your meditation isn't regular. It's infrequent at this point, but when do you tend to use it currently?
Normally when I have most time is right before I go to sleep. Those 10, 15 minutes, I use them just for that. Whenever I have those 10 to 15 minutes, I tend to want to sleep early so I can wake up with a bit more energy to go to school.
Yeah, so I think before going to sleep or at the end of the day is really a good choice. I'll come back to how you're going to fit this in here in a minute, Majid, but other times that seem to be preferred are the morning. So when I wake up before the chaos starts, before I get up and I have to. Now, some people, they cut it real tight, so they know that between sort of waking up and getting to where you need to get is minutes, if not seconds. So, they're taking that one extra minute or two in bed so that, they know that showering, dressing, traveling, and sliding into your seat, wherever you're going to go as the expectation for you to be there is a tight, sometimes a tight fit. So if you're that type of person, then the morning might not be good, but you need to figure out what type of person you are first. If you're not a morning person, then trying to figure it out to fit it in the morning is just going to frustrate you. And you'll just get disappointed in the fact that you haven't done it. You want to do it, but you haven't done it. If you're not an evening person, or maybe you find that you're really busy because your studies and all of that in the evening, it seems like you work and work and work until you drop, you've done your last bit of studying or your last bit of socializing or whatever, and you crawl yourself to the bathroom to brush your teeth, and then you crawl yourself back and drag yourself into bed and you're unconscious within a minute. That might not be a good time for you to think about mindfulness. So first, understanding what your tendencies are. And then giving it enough of a try to really allow that this might actually work. This might actually help me with my stress. And, it's not medication. It's not, some other thing. I control it. I do it when I want to do it. I can start doing it about 10 minutes a day, and it actually might work. That's the mindset to take. And that gives you a little bit of a, of a chance to do 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 sessions in a row. And if you can do 5 to 10 sessions in a row, day after day after day, you start building.
I was wondering, could you be mindful in your day-to-day activities? Like while you're doing your day-to-day activities, is there a way to be mindful during that?
Sure. And that is, to be fair, that's the object of this whole thing, is to build enough of a foundation of being alert in the moment that during your practice, when your eyes are closed and you're just sort of, listening to a guided session and you're being alert about everything that's going on, to at some point carry on your practice into living, walking, breathing daily life. So that is the ultimate goal. But can you do it to start with? Sure. You can just right now, we can all be more aware of, let's just be more aware right now of sounds. And so you can hear my voice, and you can hear my voice actually has almost like a couple different things that are creating my voice. There's almost like a scratchy, garbly thing underneath that feels like it's coming from my throat. It's lower. And then there's a higher pitch that sort of combines together to make my voice. And if you listen really carefully, you can almost hear those two things. You can hear them happening differently, but it's also with other sounds. So being aware of sounds, maybe the sounds currently in this room that you're in, maybe the sounds in the building that you're in, maybe the sounds outside of the building, but not just being aware of them and naming them, but being curious about what comprises sound. Like what actually makes all of the elements of a plane's jet engine as it flies over us. Because it's not just, we label it jet, but there's a bunch of stuff happening in that sound. Being curious about, doesn't have to be just sounds, about the visual field. So when I'm really, really curious about the visual field, I start looking at things a little bit differently. I'm just looking at my desk right now and trying to see, like there is on my monitor, there's a strip that says standby source menu, channel down, channel up, volume down, and volume up. When was the last time I looked at that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Might have been days, weeks, months. I don't know. Like you can do the same thing right now in your space. Look at your microphone, look at your monitor. Is there something on there that you're looking at? And maybe you're thinking, I'm not sure if I ever noticed that.
That's true.
Has it always been there? So
get that all sometimes.
Yeah.
Some stuff I see and it's like, wait, has that been there the whole time? And it's like,
exactly. So if you can think of your senses as dials, they are currently set, and we have different settings. Each of us has different settings. So some of us are more visual. Some of us have the auditory sense that's a little bit more acute and then really, really appreciates music and the different instruments in a song. Some of us might be more sort of emotionally sensitive. We can feel what's going on in our body. We can feel the sensitivity of pain or pleasure or tingles or temperature changes or anything like that in our bodies. What I'm suggesting, if you want to be mindful in the present moment, is just to turn those dials up a little bit. Maybe just turn one up to get used to it. Maybe it's the dial of the sense of hearing. Let's be really curious about that. Now, let's turn that one down a little bit and turn the dial of the sense of seeing up. Be really curious about that for a moment, for a minute. Can I do it for a full minute? If not, that's fine. I'm not judging myself. I'm just going to, see how much I can do of it. If I want to turn two dials up, can I do hearing and sights? Now I'm splitting my attention. The goal is to turn all of them up and have this awareness of sound, sight, feeling, smell, taste, all of it, and being very, very present and being okay with all of it. And that's when it starts that whole process of rewiring your brain and getting you a little bit more resilient to whatever is coming my way. Yeah, I'm going to be curious about it. Sometimes my body doesn't react to it very well. Sometimes stress comes out. I'm going to be curious about the stress. How does the stress present itself? Just that curiosity, not being lost in the stress, but being curious about the stress, starts making you a little bit more okay with the stress and not a a prisoner of the stress, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. So, I think it's a lot of people, when they think about it, they want the antidote, they want the cure to immediate stress, but it's not really, is it? It's about the long term. It's being able to cope with the stress long term.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like mindfulness can be pretty cool. We've just kind of realized that we haven't looked at things for a while. If you really, really put your headphones on and turn on a song, maybe your favorite song, and say to yourself, why is this my favorite song? Why do I love this song? Is it the hook? Is it the words? Is it the instrumentals? And then once you find out what it is, then say to yourself, why is it the instrumentals? Is it the guitar? Is it the drums? Is it how they play together? One more. Why is it that part of the song I love? How they play together at that moment? Does it do something to me? Maybe emotionally, maybe, it just sort of affects me in a way that makes me happy or sad. Like really being curious about stuff is fun. It could be fun. Like really digging into stuff is a journey that doesn't have to.
That's interesting because, while it is fun, and I know it's fun, but other teenagers, other youth in my age group, and I'd like to go back to the point you mentioned way back at the beginning of this episode, of the cell phones and having easy access to, entertainment, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Right now, this is immediate pleasure that, scrolling past. You don't really have to think about what you're looking at. You don't have to think about this kind of stuff. And I think what teenagers nowadays do is they're no longer looking for that, mindfulness, which is not that immediate. You have to actually immerse yourself into it. They're looking for immediate pleasure. So many, while under stress, they go and turn to, sleeping, just basically sleeping all day, all night, because it's immediate. It makes you stop thinking about it, or alcohol, or drug abuse, or, or just taking it out as anger, because that's the immediate response during stress. And I think the hard part right now as teenagers is realizing that time can be split like this. You can actually widen the time, and you can take time to really look at everything, as you said, in more detail. Why do I do this? Why am I liking this? What's the inclination of this? What part of me enjoys this? What part of my body enjoys doing this thing? Or,
Yeah, I think adding some context is important, right? So when you look at this and you look at all the things that are in here, let's just take Facebook, for example. Okay. Even though Facebook isn't as popular as it was, let's say Instagram. If I were to say to you that there's 1,000, and I'm not exaggerating, 1,000 programmers right now, probably more, working all day, every day at Instagram to do what? To find one other way to keep you on Instagram a little bit longer, to find another way to keep you on Instagram a little bit longer, right? So that is their job. Their job is to try to make this thing as addictive as possible. So it's important to just take a step back and say, okay, let me just understand the game here. If I can understand what's happening, then maybe I have a little bit more like power to be like, I don't want to be at the mercy of 1,000 programmers at Instagram. First of all, I think that's kind of like disingenuous. That's not really, that's not really like,
you're a slave to the algorithm. I think, like, you follow the algorithm. You're just part of the system yourself. You're not different.
Yeah. So the first thing is to acknowledge that it's an algorithm.
Yeah.
And if you can acknowledge that that's what's happening right now, and it is, and when I say 1,000, it's probably a low number, and they're paid really, really well to keep you hooked. So when you look at it that way, just for a moment, and say, you know what, I don't want to, like, I want to have a little bit more control over this, then you can start perhaps putting some things in place. Like, I know people that, and it's hard. Look, I am, I struggle with this as much as anyone, But I know people that have a policy at home where they don't have their phone near the bed. You know, they might have an alarm, but the alarm is in, you know, in a drawer that they can hear across the room. So then when they wake up in the morning or in the middle of the night, they don't, you know, they don't get hooked onto their phone. Or, you know, further, when I step into my house, I put my phone into a basket and I don't get it again until after dinner because I actually want to engage with my family members. Or these are things that if we don't do, the algorithm is too powerful for you to just, you know, to organically say, I'm not going to be on my phone today. I'm going to take 4 hours and not be on my phone today. Organically. Doesn't work. You know it doesn't work. I know it doesn't work. You have to put a system in place that is effectively saying, I've got to actually, my system has to be more powerful than the algorithms that are put in place to make me at the mercy of whatever platform is trying to keep me on it. And they're fighting each other desperately to keep us on their platform. So when you take that step back and then you say, I want to have more power over this situation, then you can start taking the next step of saying, how am I going to do that? What's my plan? I have to have a plan.
I think calling it a step is an oversimplification. I would say it's a leap. It's a giant leap. To step back, it's like a leaping back because it's really hard to, you know, step away from that phone.
It's an enormous
Super
change.
hard.
It's
Yeah.
an enormous change. Just the moment where you just not disconnect, but you untie the rope that's between, and you have more control of the rope. You have more control when you want to tie it, when you want to untie it. You know, I
That's
think
exactly right. It's super powerful. I mean, you can say, I'm not going to be on my phone and put it here. And without even knowing,
yeah,
subconsciously you're there, right? You don't even know how you got back there. You put it back down. You think it's going to be there for a while. You notice you're back on it. So this is what's working against us. So I think you're right. It is a huge leap. And I think for all of us, at some point, we need to take responsibility of our lives and say, what do I want my life to be? How much do I want this to be in my life? Yes, I do. It's really powerfully enhancing my life. Do I want it to control my life? No. Okay. So what am I going to do? Because if I just say, let's just see what happens, I know what happens. I've done it over and over and over again. I've run this day over and over and over again. Just see what happens is I'm going to be on this for hours and hours and hours a day. It's stuck to my hip and it's in my hand and I'm looking at it too much. So that's an example. You know, technology is one example. There are other examples of what are creating, you know, we started out the conversation, creating this additional layer of anxiety and stress. And it's just now a matter of us saying, okay, I now know that life today is busy, right? I know that things are stacked against me. I have, you know, programmers at XYZ, you know, big corporation and ABC corporation, all of them wanting my attention. And I also know that if I give my attention to too many things, I suffer. So what am I going to do about it? So you can either say, well, that's just how it is and life is, you know, tougher now than it ever has been. Yep. Okay, now what? You know, is that it? Or are we going to do something about it? And by the way, the thing that you might try, that thing you think might work, might not work. So now it's like, let me try something else. That might work for a week and then it stops working. Let me try something else. I want to take power. I want to take control of this stuff again. And mindfulness is a way to do that. Mindfulness is a really powerful tool to start taking control of some of this stuff.
Yeah, the key to all this is probably just keep trying, like not giving up, obviously, and deliberate practice.
Yep.
Yeah,
Do
and not
judge
being
yourself with you know, that's an important part of it. I think. Like when you're
exactly
trying
what I was going to
judge
say.
yourself, yeah.
No, sorry for interrupting. That's exactly what I was going to say. Whatever these things are, don't be too hard on yourself. Do not be too hard on yourself. You have best intentions to do things, and some days you can't do it because that's just a day that it's just too hard. That's fine. But don't let that one day become 3 days, become 3 weeks, become 3 months.
Yeah.
Just let that day go and say, right, that was a write-off. Let's try again tomorrow. Will tomorrow work? Maybe, maybe not. You're going to find a day that works. And then you'll find 2 days in a row that work. And pretty soon you start building a little bit more momentum in this type of thing. So don't be hard on yourself and try a bunch of different things is really, really, those are two very, very important things to know that keep you exploring, trying to figure out, trying to discover what the answer is for you, because my answer is different than your answer. And Majid, your answer is different than Maxime's answer. It just is.
Yeah.
So start creating your own solution. Start coming up with knowing, like, how does this body work? How does this body deal with stress? How does this body deal with depression? What can I put in place? Do I need to exercise? Do I need to stop eating certain things? Do I need to start meditating? Do I need to go to sleep sooner? What is the formula that works for this body? That's what this is all about. And meditation, mindfulness is it's proven to be a very good tool as part of the formula.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I couldn't have said it better myself. Like, I think you've emphasized the mindfulness in the best possible way. And I think as an adolescent, as a teenager right now, telling you, I think it's really important for us. We've seen the outcome of how stress does to our body, how it does to our mind, how it does to our relationships, whether it be with friends, family, and it's affecting us socially and personally. And we have to battle it somewhere. And what's better than to battle it through your own understanding of yourself? So it's really interesting topic. And also with this topic comes a lot of teenagers. That's why they revert to alcohol abuse and drug abuse. And we've talked about in a previous episode about alcohol addiction, this kind of stuff. And most people do that or because they don't understand themselves more. They're not aware of their current present situation. They want to escape it. They don't want to fix it. And that's me and Maxime when we decided to make this episode, thinking about our position as teenagers today in this world. You could agree with me, right? Society is moving faster than we can ever catch up on.
Yeah, totally.
With social media putting new standards, with everyone putting new standards for us every minute, not every day, every year, every minute, there's a new standard. You just somehow have to be able to catch up to that standard. But I think catching up with yourself is more important. And you've emphasized this point very well. I think our time is nearly over, but before we end this podcast, there's two things we want to say. First, if you want to say a final word, and secondly, also tell us more about your podcast.
Sure. So my final word is probably my most important word. That is, no matter how bad things are, no matter how stressful things are, it seems like they always get better. Now, you don't have to listen to me, right? You do not have to listen to me. You can just look at your own life and you can find the lowest moments in your life, and you've always been able to find moments after that have been lifted. It happens. Will we go down again? Yes. Will we come back up again? Yes. So just know that this is a cyclical journey, and no matter how bad things are, you know that they get better. Sometimes it just takes a moment for you to write it out, for just to be in a space where your body will allow itself to get better. Mindfulness can help with that, but also just be kind to yourself. Don't allow, these dark valleys to be somehow permanent, because they are not permanent. They never have been. That's a fallacy. And that's not me talking. That's you knowing, because you can evidence it in your life over and over again. And the second thing is, two shout outs. One is I have a business called mybalanceformula.com. So you can have a look at that. That has to do specifically with mindfulness. And if you're interested in that, yeah, have a look. There's some good information on there.
So
And the second is
it's mybalanceformula.com, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Yep.
put the link
Written down.
also in the description for this. And
Yep. And then completely different than mindfulness is me and my son. We have a fun podcast that we do on Dungeons and Dragons and on mixed martial arts. And it's a fun podcast that we just love spending time together with. And it's called homieandthedude.com. And that is on most platforms where you can find podcasts.
And honestly, guys, trust me when I say this, you'll love this podcast, The Homie and the Dude. It's so lighthearted and so it's cool. Just check it out. Check it out. Honestly, we had a look at it, and it's amazing. And it was a pleasure to have you, Tom. Thank you very much for talking with us about this topic, explaining it to us very well. And I couldn't have said it better myself, and I don't think a lot of people could have said it better than how you presented it today. And it was a pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Yeah, totally. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Keep up the podcasting. You guys do a really good job. Thank you so much for having me on as a guest, and good luck. And good luck to having other really cool guests on the show. That's what it's all about. So have fun with it.
Thank you very much.
We'll talk soon. Take care.
Thank you.